Benvenuti a Coffee Break Italian.
Welcome to the Coffee Break Italian show. Io sono Maurizio.
E io sono Francesca.
In these weekly episodes, we help you take your Italian to the next level, one cup at a time, as we always say here at Coffee Break Italian.
So don't forget to subscribe to the podcast feed wherever you are listening from, or if you're watching the video, subscribe to our channel on YouTube.
Yes. So, what are we talking today? What's the topic of today's episode, Francesca?
Un argomento molto interessante,
Okay.
Maurizio. We are going to look at some differences between the preposition di and the preposition da.
Sounds great. Let's get started.
Sì, dai, cominciamo.
Cominciamo. Allora, we know that di and da can be confusing for learners,
Sì,
right? And they
sì.
encounter it very soon in their language learning journey.
Sì, for example, when we want to say I come from.
Right. Yes. We can use the verb venire plus da.
Esatto.
Right.
Vengo da, ad esempio, vengo da Torino.
Perfect.
Sì.
And the question we would ask would be da dove vieni?
Da dove vieni?
Exactly.
Esatto, da dove vieni? Vengo da Torino.
Perfect. However, there's also another way of saying I am from.
Esatto, and this is where the confusion comes from.
Mhm.
Because in Italian we can also say sono di Torino.
Exactly. And we can ask di dove sei, right? So, where are you from? Di dove sei?
Sono di Torino.
Perfect. So, it's important to remember that we use venire with da or essere with di. Now, this is confusing because in English we say I am from, but we're not translating that from using da, because if we use essere, we use di.
Esatto, so we really need to have clear in our mind that essere plus di, venire plus da. And it's really important not to mix the two verbs and the two prepositions
Yes.
up.
And maybe something to remember is if you're mentioning your country of origin, we need to remember the article.
Esatto,
Right.
and in that case we can only use the verb venire followed by the preposition da and the article.
Exactly.
Ad esempio, in your case, Maurizio?
Beh, vengo dall'Italia.
Sì, sì, or I could say vengo dalla Scozia.
All right. Yes. So again, we're using the articulated form of da.
Sì,
So da plus a definite article. In this case.
esatto. Ma andiamo avanti, vediamo
Andiamo
qualcos'altro di interessante con queste preposizioni.
Mhm. So we said that one of the first meanings of da is from, but sometimes da has other meanings. What does that mean?
Esatto, da is one of those prepositions that we can use in different contexts, giving different nuances, and something that it's very useful to know is using the preposition da with the idea of going or being at someone's house or office
Yeah.
or shop. So the idea of movement or presence, let's say, at someone's.
Great. So in this case, da will not mean from, but in English, it will be translated using, I don't know, for example, to, if we're talking about moving to
Sì.
someone's place or being invited to someone's
Sì,
place.
sì.
Or it will be translated as
At.
in or at.
Esatto.
Exactly.
Vediamo qualche esempio.
Esatto. So for example, if I went to the doctors, I could tell you sono andato dal dottore.
Perfetto.
Again, I would say sono andato dal dottore.
And equally, you could use dal dottore if you are at the doctor's practice, for example.
So I would say sono dal dottore adesso, for example.
Sì, so it's really important not to link, in this case, the preposition da with the meaning we have seen before, the
Yes.
meaning from.
Yeah.
It's a completely different function that we are seeing in these examples.
Exactly. And as we were saying, you could also use da in this way with someone's place. For
Sì.
example, if I go to Francesca's,
Mhm.
I would say vado da Francesca.
Sì, or if your mom is phoning you and she's asking you, dove sei Maurizio adesso?
Sono da Francesca. Let's imagine.
Perfetto. È molto interessante questo uso della preposizione da.
Yes, and it's important, again, not to link only one meaning to one preposition.
And leading on what you have just said, Maurizio, there is something that I find really, in a way, fascinating about Italian prepositions, and it's the subtle nuance that at times we can see when using di and da, and having the same sentence being grammatically correct in both cases, but changing the meaning quite radically in a way. And
again,
I think you know what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, I'm thinking of, for example, using di and da again in a different way. So, for example, I'm thinking of, since we have a coffee cup,
Okay.
we could say una tazza di caffè.
Sì.
So that's a cup of coffee containing coffee.
Sì.
But if we say una tazza da caffè, we are specifically talking about a cup or a mug that we use to have coffee, right?
Sì, and does it mean that is there necessarily coffee inside?
Not necessarily,
No.
because we could have water or tea, for example.
Sì, or even if you go to a shop and you want to buy mugs that you will be using for coffee, then you can ask for, vorrei 6 tazze da caffè.
Exactly.
I would like 6 coffee mugs.
Exactly. And if you were to go to a bar to have a cup of coffee or 6 cups of coffees, let's say you're running to the coffee shop to get coffee for everybody in the office, you would say 6 tazze di caffè at that point.
Esatto, perfetto. So we have seen the difference between tazza da caffè and tazza di caffè. So a mug for coffee, the purpose of the cup or the mug, e tazza di caffè, a cup or a mug of coffee, so containing the coffee.
Exactly. What about another example, maybe with bicchiere?
Sì, the same rule applies to bicchiere, glass. So we can say un bicchiere di vino.
Yes, so in that case, un bicchiere di vino is a glass of wine, meaning containing wine.
And we can also say un bicchiere da vino.
Yes, so un bicchiere da vino is a wine glass.
Perfetto.
Yeah.
Io trovo questa differenza molto interessante.
Exactly. It's like a very small difference, di and da, again, two prepositions, but they can mean two different things.
Perfetto.
Yes.
I think we still have time for one other function of the preposition di in comparison with the preposition da.
I think that sounds great. What are you thinking about?
I was thinking, okay, I have these 2 examples written here in my notes, and I was thinking of commenting on the difference between un libro di Italo Calvino.
Okay.
E questo libro è stato scritto da Italo Calvino.
All right. So in the first one, so we're saying un libro di Italo Calvino. We are talking about a book by Italo Calvino.
Sì,
Right?
So the author of the book being Italo Calvino. Sì.
And if you haven't read any books by Italo Calvino, I recommend reading some of them.
Sì,
It's
ve
one
li
of my
consigliamo.
And instead, the second sentence was questo libro è stato scritto da Italo Calvino. So in this case, we're saying this book was written by Italo Calvino. In English, we're using by Italo Calvino in both sentences, but in Italian, we're using di in the first example and da in the second example. So it's important to notice which one to use depending on the sentence itself. So for example, we could say that the second sentence has the passive voice.
Esatto, esatto. I was about to say, if you
Yeah.
are familiar with the passive and you have already studied it in your language learning journey in Italian, and you're able to recognize a passive structure, then you're pretty sure that you need the preposition da, in this case, to introduce what we call, grammatically speaking, the agent of the sentence, the person by whom, literally, the action has been performed.
Yes. It's a bit complicated. We know we're using like grammar jargon, but it's important to underline this difference between di and da. All right?
Sì. Okay, Maurizio. What about maybe another example to show this difference between di and da, especially when passive structures are involved?
Sure. So we talked about books. Let's talk about films, maybe?
Sì, perché no?
For example, we could say un film di Federico Fellini. So a movie by Federico Fellini. Or we could say...
if we think of a passive structure, we could say un film che è stato diretto da Federico Fellini.
So a movie that was directed by Federico Fellini, using the passive voice.
Sì. So in the first structure is simply a film by Fellini, but in the second structure we have that agent we mentioned before because it's a passive sentence.
Exactly. But don't worry too much about these little details because native speakers will understand what you mean. Di and da are quite easy to be mixed up. So native speakers will understand you, and we always appreciate people who try to speak our language.
Of course, ovviamente, sì.
So, well, these are most of the most common uses of di and da. So we hope that was useful.
Sì, I think it was really useful, and it's something that our listeners, learners can think about, can practice in their written Italian, spoken Italian, or if you're reading something in Italian, reflect on the tiny little differences between these two prepositions.
Allora, è tutto per oggi.
Sì, direi di sì. Well, I hope you have enjoyed this lesson with us today.
And remember that the examples that we mentioned in this lesson, you can find them written down in our blog post. So check it out by visiting the link in the description of this video.
And if you would like more help with your Italian, just sign up for our regular free email lessons. Visit coffeebreaklanguages.com/Italian.
So look out for our next mini lesson in your inbox and look out for our next episode here at the Coffee Break Italian Show.
Allora, alla prossima e...
As always, happy coffee breaking! Ciao!
You have been listening to a Coffee Break Languages production for the Radiolingua Network. Copyright 2024 Radiolingua Limited. Recording copyright 2024 Radiolingua Limited. All rights reserved.